In the heart of South Carolina, where passion ignites the soul of the game, the Clemson Tigers stand at a historic crossroads. They are not just players, they are warriors forged in the fires of rivalry.
Henry's become more and more of a factor, particularly in the run game. Here's Klubnik off to the races. They pick up right where they left off against Appalachian State.
This season, amidst the thunder of cheers and the weight of tradition, this team has achieved what few have dared to dream, becoming the first in the ACC to claim 800 victories, a testament to the team's grit, determination, and its history of consistency and dominance.
Second possession for the Tigers. This is 2nd and 6. And a man wide open, a touchdown, Antonio Williams.
Leading the charge is Cade Klubnik, a junior with the poise of a seasoned veteran. 7 touchdowns on 9 drives, a performance that echoes to the historic venue that is Death Valley. He is the architect of victory, orchestrating every play with the precision of a master.
Humongous play by the freshman. Wow, a great throw and an unbelievable right-handed catch. Are you kidding me? A palm, and then he gets to the right foot down.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Nachos Analysis College Football Show. I'm Drew Archer, and as always, welcome back, Matthew. How's it going, Matthew?
I was about to say not as always, I guess, anymore, but it's good to be back again. I know I apologized last week, but sorry, it was not way out of my control. We left with plenty of time to get back.
I didn't go back and listen to where you inserted your pick, so you updated the listeners on your predicament.
I did, and I put a little picture in there too of from the news of the accident that caused this whole mess, and it was bad. So
glad you eventually made it back home.
Yeah, eventually. It only took 7 more hours than it was supposed to.
Yeah. So as always, we got a lot of football to talk. Question for you right off the bat, Matthew: is Clemson offense is it good?
I mean, things do appear that way. I didn't get to watch the first half, which we were talking off air right before we started recording that was the good half. But I tried to catch up during the second half, and it was really fun to see. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but yeah, I think Clemson's offense might actually be good. It's amazing what the difference in offensive line will make.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll talk about that offensive line here in a little bit. But to recap Week 4, Tennessee goes to Oklahoma. Oklahoma hosting Tennessee for their first SEC game. It was a 10-point game, but it was not really close. Tennessee wins that one on the road 25-15. Vanderbilt, Missouri. Missouri off to a great start so far. It comes down to a missed field goal in double overtime in Nashville. Mizzou gets out of there 30-27. USC, Michigan. Michigan wins by 3 points there. Close one in the ACC. Georgia Tech goes on the road to Louisville. Georgia Tech had a good start to this season, but Louisville wins this one 31-19. And then maybe one of the more exciting games of the weekend, Baylor, Colorado, off of a Hail Mary, a successful Hail Mary attempt. Colorado wins this one 38-31. Any thoughts on those, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start going down the list. I did watch a little bit of that Tennessee-Oklahoma game, and Oklahoma's defense looks tough. I think obviously we might have had our expectations a little too high for Tennessee's offense after the NC State win because they looked really good there. But then Clemson comes out and does almost the same thing to them. So, we're still kind of in there. But if Tennessee's offense is as good as we think it might be, then Oklahoma's defense looked really good. A lot of turnovers in that game. It was really messy to watch, honestly. I didn't get a chance to catch that Vandy-Mizzou game or most of the Michigan-USC game. There's a couple other games. I was more watching games that were on our Pick'em contest, keeping up with those. But the Baylor-Colorado game, I did fall into that trap, except I fell asleep before the ending, so I didn't get to see it live. But not only was there a successful Hail Mary attempt, but the play before that should have been a successful Hail Mary attempt, but was dropped and left 2 seconds on the clock. And then the very next play, they get a successful Hail Mary attempt to send it into overtime. Then in overtime, Travis Hunter strips the ball on the 1 yard line. Colorado wins.
Well, that Colorado Hail Mary, when it happened live, I was like, that ball hit the ground. There's no way he caught that. And then they start showing the replays. I'm like, oh my gosh, he did catch that ball. So thought Baylor was gonna pull it out, but Colorado ends up winning the game there. Before we move on to Clemson NC State, we have to shout out our loyal sponsors, and that is Pump Monkey Septic Service. If you live in the upstate, the Clemson area, and need your septic tank pumped or even just looked at to see, give Alan Powell and the folks at Pump Monkey Septic Service a call at 864-710-2211. They're on Facebook, on Instagram, and he's located in Clemson, but he travels across the upstate of South Carolina. As I mentioned, I've seen his truck in Greenville, Simpsonville. So give him a call at 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
Okay, Drew, before we hop into Clemson NC State, I did notice something from last week's episode while I was editing. You did not say the tagline, when the dumb is funky, call Pump Monkey, and I was very disappointed when I got through that segment.
Did I not?
No, you didn't. You just you did everything else. You hit all the other points, but not the tagline, so I was a little sad about that. That's a little minor.
Oh, well, I've had multiple people just walk up to me, people I didn't even know were listeners of the show, and they would just say, when the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey. So I'm sure it did not go unnoticed. So to our listeners and to Alan Powell at Pump Monkey, I'm sorry for forgetting the tagline.
The greatest tagline in advertising history, possibly.
Yeah. I might have to say it twice next week to make up for it. So we kind of touched on this game. It was a tale of two halves, more so a lot of production in the first three quarters, and you start getting a lot of reserves in there. And the fourth quarter was a little different looking than the rest of the game. Some of the milestone achievements of this week: Clemson becomes just the 14th FBS program and the first ACC program to reach 800 all-time wins. And the Tigers went from their 700th all-time win to their 800th in just 118 games. That's the fastest stretch between milestones in program history. Clemson has been good within the confines of Death Valley. I was actually listening to Mickey Plyler's Monday edition of his show on the Roar, and as I was getting out of the car, he was talking about this offense has done a lot. It's making the fan base feel good about this team, but one thing they haven't done and they hadn't done well in recent memory is perform well on the road. So that's a test coming up. But at home, Clemson extended their home win streak against NC State to 10 games. That dates back to 2004, the longest in series history there. Head coach Dabo Swinney now has 172 victories, just one win shy of Bobby Bowden's 173 wins. He is the leader as far as ACC coaches go. So with a win this weekend against Stanford, Dabo can tie or pass Bobby Bowden, or tie Bobby Bowden. Offensive power: Clemson has scored 59 points in back-to-back games for only just the third time in program history. On the ground game last week, Clemson rushed for 269 yards, marking consecutive games with 250-plus rushing yards for the first time since 2021. Cade had himself a game as he did against App State. He went 16 of 24, 209 yards, 3 touchdowns, plus a career-high 70 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Some of the key offensive players this weekend: wide receiver Antonio Williams caught 3 passes for 39 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Phil Maffa reached 107 yards. It was nice to see them let him get over that 100-yard hump and then pull him out of the game there in the third quarter. Cole Turner and Jay Haynes scored their first career touchdowns of their career, as well as I believe it was Adam Randall's first touchdown, which kind of blew my mind as well. One other thing on Cole Turner: he reached 21.8 miles an hour on that touchdown the other day, which, as of the last rankings of speeds as far as FBS teams and players go, that would tie him for the third fastest run in FBS. So there might be some truth to that Dabo talking about his speed. Jake Brenning still joined the elite 1,000-yard career receiving yard club, become just the 5th tight end in school history to do so. Linebacker Sammy Brown recorded a career-high 4 tackles for loss, the most by a Clemson player since 2019. And then something that's this huge, it was a big part of Clemson's struggles last year when they weren't winning, was the turnover margin. They won the turnover margin for the 2nd time this season, marking the 100th time in Sweeney's tenure. Tigers hold an impressive 94-6 record when winning the turnover battle.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to one of these stats that you read about Clemson's home dominance. I didn't realize that we had won 10 games in a row at home against NC State, which is pretty crazy. I feel like NC State is usually a pretty competitive game with Clemson, and back to 2004, I would say like half of Clemson's football players weren't even born the last time that NC State beat Clemson at home, which is kind of crazy. Also, the stat you mentioned about Adam Randall, that was one thing while I was watching the game was, where has this Adam Randall been for, his 2 or 3 years he's been here? He looked like what we always wanted him to be, but I don't know if you saw this after the game. It's the most Adam Randall thing that I think he's going to miss the next couple weeks with an injury.
Yep.
Really hard to see. It seemed like he was just about to start getting it on track. Now we got another setback.
It was a cool moment, though, because they knew he had this injury prior to the game, and he went to Dabo and basically was like, I know I need to have the surgery, but I want to play this weekend. So it was cool for him to be able to go out there and have maybe his best game of his career at Clemson so far.
Hopefully the surgery doesn't take that away from him. Maybe he should have just kept playing hurt.
I believe he had it Sunday morning, and then, of course, with every injury over the last couple years, Dabo's tagline, he's day-to-day. So day-to-day could turn into week-to-week or month-to-month. So who knows there. So what were your thoughts on this matchup, Matthew?
So I think I already mentioned it in this episode, but I was at work for the first half, so I was like speeding through the first half when I got home to catch up, and I caught up around the 4th quarter, which isn't exactly what the game I wanted to watch live, but, here we go. I did hear, I forget what game it was during, but it was like during the halftime of one of the later ACC window games, and Eric McLean during the halftime show said that he's seen 3 great 30-minute games out of Clemson's defense, and he wants to see 1 complete game. And I agree with that. We had a great first half against Georgia, great first half against App State, great first half against NC State. Obviously, we're like rotating guys in, but I feel like the scheme and just getting your players into position should be consistent throughout. And there were a couple plays in that second half where we looked like we definitely had put some people in who might never see the field again. So, I don't know how to feel about that. I would like to see Clemson's defense get more consistent as the season goes on, as we get those younger guys more experience the next time they get in a game. Hopefully we're not giving up 35 in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. And part of it's like weighing, well, yes, it was your second, third, and maybe fourth string guys against the team that you'd already beaten. But two, there was some mistakes even when our starters were still in there. There was a lot of coverage issues, I feel like, and especially that drive where you had 3 back-to-back pass interference calls that I think led to a touchdown there for NC State that was tough to watch.
Yeah, that drive in particular was really tough, and I honestly had blocked that out of my mind until you just brought it up. But onto the offensive side, Cade is looking really great right now, and I was worried after the Georgia game that he was going to go through that DJ Uiagalelei phase where after he lost to Georgia and couldn't really get any offense going, it kind of seemed like it got in his head, and it plagued him maybe the rest of the year. But that is not happening to Cade right now. He's looking confident, playing loose, making great decisions, and making even better throws. Yeah, the only other thing I had written down in my notes for the game was what we just talked about with Adam Randall. Like, what a great game for him, and crazy that was his first career touchdown. I swear he had scored before, but hopefully he has a quick recovery and can get back to what he just did.
Yeah. My only thoughts I have written down here, Clemson offense equals good. When everybody was screaming at the clouds because the sky was falling after the Georgia game, if you just look close enough, you could see some improvements even against a far superior team like Georgia. And the fact that, like you mentioned, Cade's confidence has not wavered going up against the best defense that they will face all year long. He's continued to improve his confidence. His confidence is getting higher and higher. Is he playing perfect? No, but he's when you can play loose and confident, that's what it looks like. Deshaun Watson threw a lot of interceptions, but he played loose and confident. He had the confidence to make those plays and throws. So this offense has been really fun to watch. And shout out to the offensive line. Blocking has been really good this year. Blocking when it comes to the receivers has been really good. I can't remember if it was Randall or who it was blocking two dudes down the field at the same time.
I think it
was Randall.
I think it was Randall because I remember this play. Like, not only was Adam Randall using his size and ability to get open and catch balls on Saturday, he was using his size and ability on the perimeter. And I might have even been that Nolan Turner. Is that his name? No, Cole Turner.
Yeah.
I'll always get them mixed up, I guess. Whatever, that Cole Turner like little end around play. I'm pretty sure it was Adam Randall on that side that got a really big impact block that made that touchdown happen. So great work from him all around.
Yeah, and then just one other thing on the offense, and Cade, do want to the throw he made to Antonio Williams, I believe it was the second quarter, down the sideline. Or no, it wasn't to Antonio Williams. Who was it to? It was to Moore down the sideline. I think it was like a 30-yard pass play. Defender all over him and put the ball only where Moore could catch the ball. So this offense has been fun to watch. I'm not a big fan of leaving games early. I've left both home games early this season just because I guess it's a good problem to have. Left App State at halftime, and then it was just so brutally hot this past weekend. We left at the end of the third quarter. We stayed long enough to watch the fourth quarter video, and then we hit the road. So
I think you, or I at least cut a clip of you last week saying something about South Carolina fans leaving the stadium early.
Yeah, I believe you did. Hand up. I did it. It was hot. When you have to wait in line I showed up, I think there was 2 or 3 minutes left to go in the second quarter, went downstairs to use the bathroom and try to beat the line to get water. Stood in line pretty much the entire halftime to get water. And so I was not about to have to go back, and they don't have those little coolers anymore. You just walk up and get a cup and some free water. You had to go buy it from the concession stand. So it was rough. I decided to get out of the heat. So all right, our Twitter poll of the week. As always, the only way to participate in this each week is to follow us on Twitter or X at Nachos_analysis. This week's Twitter poll is: Clemson will face Stanford for the first time since the 1986 Gator Bowl. What 1986 price do you wish was still in effect today? So a couple of listener responses. I kind of forgot that your sister was on Twitter because I hadn't seen her interact with our account in a very long time. But so she was the first person to get in with a comment and says, can I vote low grocery prices? I would second that one as well. Then Dylan gets in and says, I'll go with gas, would lower the cost of everything else. But the options are gas, which in 1986 was 93 cents a gallon. The average car price was $9,225. This is my favorite one here. Home. The average home cost $76,000. I would love for that to be the case now. And then Clemson's tuition back in 1986, just under $6,000 a year. Which one of these did you vote for, Matthew? I know you're currently probably got some student loans from Clemson at the moment.
Yeah, that is making the Clemson tuition one look very appetizing. But, I mean, I gotta agree with Dylan also about, low gas prices is going to make most every, material good cost lower. But also, I kind of like this question because it's kind of hard to answer it without being, a little political. So it's kind of a new territory for us on this podcast. I think I would probably go with housing costs, though. $76,000 for a house would get a lot of people the opportunity to buy a house and would solve a lot of problems in our country. So, yeah, I got to go with housing costs.
Yeah, I'm going to, as much as I love cheap gas, got a paid off car, still paying tuition, not to Clemson, but I'm going to also go with a $76,000 home. The way the poll shook out, the car got the least amount of votes was 6%, Clemson tuition 9%, 93 cents per gallon of gas 26%, and then the winner, everyone pretty much agreed with us, 59%, the average home price of $76,000. So this is your Nachos and Analysis political and economics topic of the day.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction? Fact or fiction? Since the Georgia game, the starting Clemson offense led by Cade has punted on just one drive. Tigers continue to see this type of offensive production versus Stanford.
I'm going fact on this one because I have watched a little bit of Stanford this year. I forget who they played this past week. It was one of their first ACC games. Syracuse. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that game, and while they look decent, I don't expect their defensive talent to be that much higher than what we saw against NC State. So I'm expecting Clemson's offense to keep rolling here. And I know we always talk about keeping our expectations low, but it's getting really hard right about now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that this trend continues. Does Clemson punt maybe twice this weekend with the starters in? Maybe. But I think you're going to continue to see this team grow. I think that Stanford, though not much better, I do think they're a little bit better than NC State and the best team we might have faced since Georgia, which sounds weird talking about Stanford in that way. Yeah, I think this offensive production with Cade and the starters in there continues again this week, especially with the improvement we've seen along the offensive line and the receivers. Fact or fiction? We've reached a point in production and theatrics at Clemson now that the game day experience is in decline. I know you hadn't been to a game yet this year, Matthew, but I know you've seen the text thread with your dad and the Hill production and all that stuff. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was going to preface my answer with I have not been to a game. So everything I've heard of the new game day updates is through another person. And I also, that's kind of funny that you mentioned that. My thought whenever my dad was talking about that, because he even sent it to our household family group text and was email this number and complain. And I was like, this is the most politically active my dad has been about anything in his life. And it's about Clemson football.
I will say, I would have never, I also sent an email to that email. I would have never done that. I've never done anything like that before. I'd be willing to bet your dad probably has not either. But the fact that we saw it work, because in week 1 when they had the dude screaming third down and everybody flooded that email box with it and they got rid of it, it has not been back since. I think people saw that, all right, well, maybe if they get enough complaints about an issue, it might actually work. So there's a whole thread on Tiger Illustrated complaining about it. Your dad's been quite active in that TI thread this week.
But yeah, I'm going to go fact because it just seems like they're trying to force stuff in and try to improve stuff, but you're just forcing things into where they don't belong. I don't know the last time that the Hill sequence has changed. And we thought it was just a little different last week because of the DeAndre Overton tribute. But, I mean, I guess that wasn't the case this week because it was a little weird and clunky and awkward. So I feel like messing with the flow of something like that it can't be good.
Yeah, it's different. We now have 2 videos. The band does not play their, was it Rock'em Orange Bowl March or something? I can't remember what exactly it's called, leading up to Tiger Rag. And there's just a lot of downtime. I'm almost willing to bet the team stood at the top of the hill for 60 seconds before they ran down the hill. So it's just kind of awkward. In my email, I included, there's a lot you can improve at Clemson's game day experience for the fans, and that is not one of the things you need to touch. So I'm going to say fact, we're in a decline. And the header of my email was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is a timeless tradition. It used to be the famous, most famous 25 seconds in college football. Now it's the slowest 2.5 minutes. They have more space dedicated to the middle of the hill than they've ever had. You can park 2 trucks sideways there. yet you still have two guys just going 2 by 2 down the hill, and it just takes forever. So I guess after Clemson's performed the way they have the last 2 weeks, we're have the luxury of complaining of stuff like this.
Yeah, it's better than complaining about like offensive production and coaching staff and Tyler Grisham and, the same old things.
Yeah. Which shout out to Tyler Grisham. He gets a lot of hate, especially with the last few years, but his receivers have improved. They've gotten healthy this year, so shout out to him. Last one, fact or fiction. Matt Luke is Dabo's most important hire since Chad Morris and Brent Venables.
See, I'm going 3 straight facts again this week. And I actually, right before we started recording, saw on Twitter, I think it was William Cockrell, who we mentioned in a previous episode, who responded to one of our Twitter polls, a former Clemson player. He shared a screenshot of text messages with Eric McLean the day that Matt Luke's hire was announced, but before the announcement had been made. And he was teasing, or Eric McLean was teasing it as this is Dabo's biggest hire since Brent Venables and is the biggest except for Brent Venables. So I'm agreeing with that. I think it's fact. Matt Luke is the most impactful hire outside of Brent Venables. Brent Venables changed this program so much, and Clemson, my entire childhood, was never known for having a stout defense. And as soon as Brent Venables got here, that changed in an instant. So obviously, offensive line is pretty important too, and the impact is being felt massively. Cade has so much time in the pocket. I feel like we're just communicating better on the offensive line and just knowing what to do in different situations. So that's all down to coaching and Matt Luke.
Yeah, I'm gonna say fact here as well, but to be a little contrarian, this might not technically work based on a technicality. You could say Jeff Scott but he was promoted from within when he moved up to offensive coordinator. You saw the drop off after him and Tony Elliott left. But I'm going to say fact. I'm going to say this is a huge hire for Clemson. You're already seeing the impact of it, and it's going to help Clemson's longevity through this season.
Weekly picks.
All right, let's review our Week 4 picks. After a really good start to the season, Matthew and I have a little bit of a down week with our picks this week. Matthew goes 1-3. I went 2-2. That puts me 1 point behind Matthew in the season total, though, now. So Matthew with 10 points on the year, creeping back up after my rough week, I think, on week 2. Yeah,
I was bound to have a bad week at some point because I was getting by on some luck and technicalities in the first 3 weeks. I had one over that hit by half a point, another one that did a similar thing, and it wouldn't have hit if it didn't go into overtime. Just some crazy stuff happening to keep me alive, but my luck kind of faltered this week. I lost, although I will say, I texted Drew this on Saturday that I have not missed on an underdog pick yet this year, which is the only pick I got right this week. And 3 out of my 4 underdogs have won outright, and I've expected almost none of those to win outright at least. So that was this week. My underdog was Navy plus 9.5 versus Memphis. Ended up going in and getting that win. Like I said, I was not expecting that, but Memphis had a little hangover game after the Florida State win.
Yeah, the only 2 I got right were my favorite and my over. I had a good feeling. I had Tennessee -7 going into Norman, Oklahoma. I had a feeling that they probably win by 10 points, which ended up being what it was. Oklahoma didn't really seem like it had much of a chance there. Oklahoma cannot run the ball. I think they had 36 total rushing yards in this game. And then the over for me hit Illinois, Nebraska over 43.5. I kind of wanted to pick Nebraska last week, and I'm glad I did not. And from everything I've heard, it was a great game. I was busy Friday night, didn't get a chance to watch it. So, but 2 points for myself, 1 for Matthew. That brings us within 1 point on the season, and we still got to figure out a punishment. So,
I don't have any new ideas for this week, at least, but
I think we'll just commit to one next week. We're just going to say it now and force ourselves to commit to something next week.
Okay. I doubt that that's going to happen, but we can do it. Okay, so but moving on for week 5, we can go ahead and get into our picks. I'm a little shaky after last week, so I'm a little worried. But going favorite, Oklahoma gonna have a bounce back week this week at Auburn, I believe. I think it's an away game.
Yeah.
They're favored by 2.5 right now. I think Oklahoma, they're starting a new quarterback this week, and Auburn has looked pretty bad this year. So
Yeah, dropping that game to Arkansas at home was not ideal for Auburn. I'm going with the undefeated Brigham Young's BYU 3-point favorite on the road against Baylor this week.
I saw this on Twitter today. Apparently BYU's quarterback is Jewish, and like one of his NIL merch things is like a shirt that says like #BYJew, which is just kind of funny. Like, since BYU is like a Mormon school, I don't know.
Yeah.
But moving on to my underdog this week, I'm going Washington. They're 2.5-point underdog to Rutgers, and Rutgers had a big week this past week, but I think it's still Rutgers, and Washington is still Washington.
Yeah. My underdog, I'm going with a Big Ten matchup. Ohio State on the road, East Lansing. Michigan State is a 25-point underdog. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer this week.
Yeah, Michigan State has looked decent this year, better than they have pretty much since COVID. I feel like Michigan State was always like in that middle Big Ten range, and then once COVID happened, they just kind of took a big hit as a program, but seem to be getting back to that like middle of the road at least.
Yeah, they did drop to Boston College this weekend, but I think this could be a tricky game for Ohio State.
Yeah, I feel like those conference games can always be closer than you think they're going to be. But my over this week is a semi kind of a conference game. Louisville at Notre Dame. That's plus or minus 47.5. Louisville had a nice win last week against Georgia Tech. Not sure Notre Dame's defense is amazing. So that one might get pretty high up there. I don't know if I said it, but it's plus 47.5.
Yes, because that's also what I got it at, plus 47.5. Because I agree with everything you just said. And Louisville, potentially the only other ranked team that Clemson would play in the regular season this year. I believe they're 15th right now. But yeah, I think that one's going to have some points in it.
All right. And then lastly, I'm going to bet that this is one of those old clouded, what is that saying? Like 3 yards in a cloud of dust or something. Yeah. I'm going for that type of game this week in Tuscaloosa, UGA versus Alabama. 48.5 is that line, and I could see that one staying pretty low.
I considered that pick there myself. I also hate the fact that this is going on at the same time as the Clemson game too, so I will be following along on my phone. I'm sticking with another team from the state of Alabama, Oklahoma, Auburn, under 45.5. They're on the Plains in Auburn. All right, let's preview the Stanford matchup with the Tigers. Stanford coming to Clemson for the first time as ACC opponents, and first time ever. The only time that these two teams have faced, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, was the 1986 Gator Bowl, which the Tigers won. As of Tuesday, when we're recording this, the Tigers are a 22-point favorite. Over-under set at 57.5. We also kind of touched on this. Coach Sweeney is attempting to tie Bobby Bowden this week with a win, an all-time win, to be tied with him for the most wins as an ACC head coach. Clemson is attempting to average 7.5 or more yards per play in 3 straight games for the first time since a 3-game stretch against Louisville, Boston College, and Wofford in 2019. App State, the Clemson App State game, the Tigers averaged 9.8 yards a play, and against NC State this past weekend, they averaged 7.8 yards a play. Saturday would be Clemson's 100th homecoming game on record since the first celebration in 1922. Overall, Clemson is 77-19-3 in its previous 99 homecoming games.
I have a question. I'm not sure that you would know this, but I guess that technically means that there were 2 years without a homecoming game.
I believe so. When I was looking through the notes, I think I noticed an extra blurb, and I did not read any further.
Okay. I guess it could be like maybe it was around like World War II times when
That'd be a good guess, yeah.
like you didn't have a football team or your football team was heavily decimated. Like it's hard to celebrate homecoming when your players are out in Europe fighting Nazis.
Very true. Clemson has won its last 21 night games in Death Valley, a streak that dates back to the middle of the 2013 season. One kind of negative stat: the Tigers are just 7-9 all time when facing a team for the first time as a new conference opponent.
Yeah, I was shaking my head to the 21 night games in Death Valley, and I realized what the clue was saying when to the middle of the 2013 season of what game that is probably referring to.
That'd be the Florida State game.
Exactly. I'm sorry to bring it up, but we should have just glazed past it. That's my fault.
Yeah. No, I talked about leaving the last two home games early. I believe that Florida State game in 2013 may have been the first game that I actually voluntarily left on my own.
Yeah, I think I was close to, and I like wanted to stay, but everybody in my family was like, come on, Matthew, we're not coming back down from 56 points. Like,
yeah. So it'll be pretty cool. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Cal, Stanford joining the Atlantic Coast Conference, but I always like whenever you get to host new teams, new fans, that kind of thing. So it'll be cool to play Stanford. That's really all I got.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, that's one thing I've loved about college football this year is I feel like we've gotten a lot of matchups, even out of conference, of teams that aren't afraid to drop one game during the regular season because there's still great chances to get into the college football playoffs. So we've been blessed with games that teams are meeting for the first time, and they're both historic franchises, or not franchises, but whatever the word is, programs. So that's one thing I really like about this season. We've already talked about it during Fact or Fiction, but I'm expecting the offense to continue rolling, and it's great being able to get your young guys in the second half, and that doesn't happen without your offense having like a huge explosive start at the beginning. So I think we're going to be able to keep that rolling. Garrett Riley's like scripts on the first couple drives this year have been crazy. Like maybe other than Georgia, we haven't scored on, or Georgia was the only game that we didn't score on the opening drive.
Yeah, and to that game, we did not execute. That whole first drive was just a series of mistakes. But I liked what I saw being called that first drive too. So to Garrett Riley's credit.
Yeah, I agree. So looking for big things out of Clemson's this week. I would expect them to cover at least in the first half. I don't know once we get the second half guys in if that's going to hold up. But yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Isn't it nice to have this problem again? Like I think I mentioned it on last week's episode. One of Clemson's biggest advantages when they were on that playoff run all those years was being able to get younger guys experience throughout the season, so that by the end of a 15-game season, when people's bodies are breaking down, they're tired, they're exhausted, you have true freshmen and sophomores that have significant playing time that's going to be an added value to your team later in the season. So that's really nice to have at this point. And then one other thing, I got to go back and check because I can't remember who was the leader in each game, but through 3 games this season, Clemson has had a different wide receiver lead the team in receptions and reception yards this season. So that's also kind of a sign of the times and a sign of improvement where you're getting a different mix of guys that are performing each week.
Yeah, and I don't think we mentioned it, but another point to your like getting young guys in, getting them experience, is that's going to improve your scout team looks, because most of these guys that were playing in the NC State game fourth quarter were scout team guys, and having those guys having game experience against a big D1 program, that's going to be big also, because they're just going to be more physically ready and know what it means to give their offense, the ones, a good look.
Yeah, absolutely. So it feels nice to kind of be back in this offensive position. That things are going well for Clemson right now when everybody And we touched on some of the mistakes with the defense this week, but everybody's nitpicking and complaining about the defense when in the last few years, this defense is what probably was the key factor in most of the wins that the Clemson Tigers have had over the last 3 years. So, but I expect Wes Goodwin to get the defense right and to continue to improve, just like this offense is going to be from week to week.
And you didn't have Peter Woods this past week against NC State, which is a big. I mean, you have a lot of depth there on the interior defensive line, but not having that one player is going to be big. Your best player probably on defense. So, got to give them a little bit of slack, and they held up really well in the first half. So, if we're winning by 50 points at halftime, I guess I don't mind if they score 30 in the second half.
Yeah. Just sucks for the people who put some money on a Clemson point spread. So, but anyways, thank you as always for joining us. I appreciate you, the listener. As I mentioned last week, without you, Matthew and I are just talking into a microphone. So, but join us next week, and we will recap the Stanford game and talk some ball. Peace.
Peace.